Welcome to this special episode of Please Ask podcast, where theatre meets science. Today, we're diving into the challenges, discoveries, and unexpected moments that arise when artists and scientists create together. This conversation is part of the final stage of the Please Ask initiative, a European project that brings together 3 international partners from Bulgaria, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. Over the course of the project, the teams explored how theatre can bring scientific ideas to life and how these collaborations can develop into a sustainable methodology for the future. In this episode, you'll hear from representatives of all 3 teams.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our roundtable discussion called Please Ask When Theatre Meets Science, Challenges and Discoveries in Art-Science Collaboration. First, let's start with the Arte Urbana Collective. It's a Bulgarian team, and they were one of the initiators of the Please Ask project. Here we have Dimitar Uzumov, who's the artistic director and actor. Maybe you saw him last night at the show Wonder Space Future, in which he and his colleagues explored the fascinating world of astrology. And part of the Bulgarian team is also Andrea Brunello. He's an Italian playwright and scientist who worked on similar projects before, and he was a creative consultant not only for this performance but also for the whole project. Then we have the Hungarian team that worked under Pro Progressione organization. They created a show called Do You See the Rose Bush? Where it begins to wilt, know that I'm in trouble. And in this show, they were searching for ways ecology and theater can intersect and about the questions the nature can answer for us. And with us, we have Viktor Sivak Todd, who's the director of the show, and Lajos Roja, who is the scientific expert of the performance. And then we have the theater from Prague, DAFA Theater, and with us we have Reka Deák, who's the artistic director, and Aurel Gabris, who was the scientific coordinator of the performance that was supposed to introduce quantum physics to young audiences. So maybe if I would start with the Bulgarians, if you can just quickly introduce your show, how the collaboration started. Did you know Andrea before? Did you do something like this before?
Very briefly, yeah, maybe we had some experience. It's since 2016-17 when we met with Andrea. He introduced his work, and I was, this is something very interesting, because as I mentioned, I'm a theater maker, but I also have a geological degree. For me, it was very interesting what he's doing. And in 2017, we founded here in Bulgaria a platform called Theater and Science. And since then, we are producing such kind of science theater productions, also sometimes more like lectures with scientists. Andrea called them augmented lectures. Those are scientists on stage talking about some scientific topic, but with some artistic elements like sound design, light design, video design. We had something to start on, really solid. And most of the people with whom we collaborated, they were already people with whom we collaborated. One of the scientists, you saw him yesterday, the male scientist, who is very popular science communicator here, Vladi Buzilov. Then the new people to the team was the actress. We made casting for the actress, for the choreographer, and also through Vladi, we got to know Milena Georgieva, who is a biologist, and she's the other scientist that was associated to our project.
So what about you? Have you known each other before? You worked together before?
No, we didn't know one another. And it's not a permanent company we are working with. It was created for this project, and For the first time, we know that we will work together with Lajos and on the topic of evolutionary biology, and with my dramaturg, Panka Paskui. During the casting process, we were looking for actors, creators, co-creators who are experienced in non-traditional forms of theater making, professionals of interactive forms, immersive theatrical forms, because our proposal, origin proposal, has some constraints for this project previously, such as the target audience. It should be for family audience with all of the age groups, and it should be site-specific, nature-closed, and it's about the evolutionary biology. And we tried to create a team for this experimental work. And then after we start the work, we getting known one another and field of one another. Yes, it was quite interesting for the first part of the rehearsals when we do everything. Sometimes with the evolutionary biology, sometimes without the evolutionary biology. We talked about, we were dancing with Lajos as well, or creating
which is
some...
nice.
Yes,
Which is not true.
Yes, which is not true from the scientific aspect, but from ours it's absolutely true. So yeah, we tried everything together.
Oh yes, I was educated as a biologist, and I have a researcher job in Budapest, and I also teach at the Babes-Bolyai University in Romania, in Cluj. And I'm very much interested in popular science, in making popular science programs. And I got into this project quite accidentally. Someone from this group knew a colleague of mine. He was invited, he had no time, no efforts for this project, so he passed this task over to me, and I was lucky to join. It was a challenge for me for a long period. I couldn't really understand what was going on, how it would look like at the end.
What about Jureka and Aurel?
Yes, so I met Aurel because he has a wonderful wife, an architect, and we cooperated with her first, and then we went for a barbecue. We had one beer or two, and when we were drunk enough, we decided to do a quantum short. We did it in 2 days, and we got listed in Quantum Film Festival in Singapore, and then we felt, wow, it's either the beer or us. And and then Hussam contacted us to come on board and do even more crazy thing, create a quantum physics inspired performance for children.
For me, this project fits into a broader context. I'm a researcher in quantum technologies, and currently there's a belief that quantum technologies is going to be one of the key future technologies that is going to define even maybe the global order. Okay, and therefore this is a strategic thing which receives attention also from policymakers and also from industry, from all over society. On the other hand, quantum is something that very few people know about, and it really starts from the top. So you can't find people who can work in areas that requires quantum technology. Very few. So there's a general shortage of workforce, and I started with this way that I work at the Czech Technical University. We have a bachelor's and a master's program in quantum technologies to address exactly this shortage. At the same time, I'm also involved in a global nonprofit where we target more the professional audience who is already maybe an engineer or a student with some other kind of background, and they have solid knowledge in something, and they can base this on they can form this forms a basis to learn more about quantum and then eventually become an expert and then be able to innovate or use it. And what was really missing for me was this children target audience. So and when I met with Rika and Hussam, I really understood that reaching out to an audience that is not interested, it's not about teaching them about quantum, but to make them familiar. That puppetry is, I felt that this is going to be a very nice language to speak. Of course, I had no idea how to do it, and we had this short project, which was very encouraging, and we understood that we can work together. And when there was this opportunity to be part of this Please Ask, and it was obvious that we will be doing this, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and looking at the audience also, I can't repeat this enough. I think we have a very, very unique opportunity in Europe that we are able to have these collaborations that connect the entire continent. And I've been part of projects that connected different nationalities, different countries. But this project, which has let's connect to completely different parts of society, is I think it's maybe the most valuable experience that I had so far, because it's a very different approach, and I think we have learned a lot from each other during this project.
Yes.
So that's exactly my next question. You mentioned that most people don't know much about quantum physics, so obviously we had to learn quite a bit about quantum physics. What about you? You were exploring the fascinating world of astrophysics. Did you have to study the subject, and what would you say was the most fascinating fact that you learned? Was there something to share with the audience?
Yeah,
besides the sex. Sex works in the universe.
So as I mentioned, well, I'm not new to the scientific topic of astrophysics, astrobiology. Part of geology is also astrophysics. And also with Vladi, the astrophysicist, we have been collaborating, as I mentioned, since 2018. So I already, through him, and it's our second show on astrophysics, actually third production on astrophysics with him. So I learned a lot. But for this particular, besides how to do SIS in space,
yes. You have to see the show to learn if you can or you cannot.
Was for the Fermi paradox. For example, this was something that I learned that it's fascinating because very quickly, for those who haven't watched the show, what is Fermi paradox? Given the huge size of the universe, and given the fact that there are so many exoplanets similar to Earth, purely mathematically there should be other life forms, and also purely mathematically other intelligent life forms. But we haven't met them yet. And
as far as we know.
Yeah. And of course there are many speculations, and one of them that I like very much and that we explored in the show is that maybe they know about us, but because we are some kind of dangerous species, they're okay, those are some dangerous animals, we should, not manifest ourselves to those crazy, Earthians. And we explored this. So this is something that I learned, and I find it very dramaturgic, strong.
What about you, Reka? Do you want to... Oh, Andrea. Yeah.
Oh, no. Please ask her. I already spoke before, so...
No, I'll ask you something as well, but I think I'm not... Oh, have you learned anything fascinating from
Of course,
working?
yes.
Sure.
I mean, when you approach a new topic and you want to make a play out of it, you really need to understand what you are going to be talking about. So, it's a absolute must. So having at our disposal two scientists as wonderful as the ones that we had was really great. They provided us a lot of material, books, articles, a lot, and also we had several online. Because I live in Italy, so I couldn't be here in person. But so for me, it was online conversations, and I mean, so absolutely we learned a lot. We learned a lot about the possibilities of procreating in space. I mean, yes, sex, but because we had to make some fun of it. There was a lot of irony in our thing. But actually, Elon Musk and all of these other technocrats are actually talking continuously about moving the Earth, the human species out somewhere else, on Mars, for example. But is it possible? So, how hard it is life possible? And once you are there, can you come back? I mean, this Mira, the character in the play that is born outside of the Earth in this microgravity environment, she cannot come back. So the same thing, we were told, the same thing would happen if you had, a new human species on Mars. They couldn't come back to Earth. So what are we living? So a million questions came up. And it was also at one point very difficult. Dimitri and I sat down and we started writing and saying, we threw away a lot of stuff because it would become a 5-hour play because there were so many interesting things to talk about.
Actually, the way it ended, it just asks for a sequel.
If I can add to the question what I learned, because we also have people from Netherlands researching about the topic and it's in the play, is that actually their startup, it was initially a Dutch startup, to born the first baby in space. It's I'm not sure of the name,
Space
but
One.
for
Space One.
Space One. Space One.
It
Okay.
must be a scientist coming up with names.
So and it was really, for me it was fascinating because I thought that we know everything about space research is so publicly available information. But then suddenly you discover there are actually startups that already gather money and they will plan to do this, and it's a reality because once we are talking about science fiction. Once you imagine it, once you start doing things, the next step is not very far from reality.
So Rekka, what was the most fascinating thing you learned from Aurel and from quantum physics?
So I can name 2 things, but I mean, it's
Endless,
from
yeah.
the endless, infinite variation. I need to pick up something, and one of it, of course, it's the proportions of the quantum particles. Or, it's for me it's really fascinating that what I see with my 2 eyes and what I can sense, and what's happening in quantum physics. I still couldn't process it. I just have a sense that, that's fascinating as science. And the second one, for me, it was really inspiring to understand the scientific approach, like how many times you do trials, you work on it, and you are not focused as much on the outcome than rather to observe the process. And I'm a theater maker, and for me it's important to have the performance, and when this performance meets the audience, to have connection, dialogue, success. But it's not about this. It's how we rehearse, how we experiment, how we understand. So this was inspiring for me.
And what about you, Victor?
It's quite similar. So I couldn't tell you something very concrete things that I've learned from this process, but an impression. I can report about an impression, and it not represent the whole team. It's for me. But for me, the most important thing was that the evolution has no goals, and this get me closer to the post-human thinking, which wasn't really familiar to me before. That it's not about us.
When we think of science, it's very rigid, and when we think of art, it's very aloof. Like it's.
All over the period, I felt myself an absolute outsider, which is an adventure. I enjoyed it very much. Switching back to what Victor told, I hope he was right in saying that we are somewhere in the middle of human evolution. Not the final, the end, the closing stage of that. So let's hope so. Evolution is exciting, and the human species is very strongly selected by, do you know by what force?
No.
By sexual selection. women select males and males select females and so on. So the selection pressure from the outside environment, the predators and the climate and so on is weakened, but sexual selection that people exhibit mate preferences, and luckily different women prefer different mates and vice versa. So selection is going on, the human species is changing quickly, so I hope you are right that we will change further on. But switching back to your question, I had a lot of questions. For example, about the title of this Theatre of Wonder. I asked, are there wonders in nature? And I think if you ask a scientist, usually they will say, no wonders at all. In the sense, they mean that no miracles, you know. But if you ask a scientist, is it wonderful? I mean, is nature wonderful? Is the universe wonderful? Yes, it is. And it becomes more and more wonderful as you get more and more understanding what is going on and how this mechanism is behaving, and what's the reason for this, for that, and so on. So I was thinking about wonders, and I would say no miracles, but yes, it is very, very much wonderful. So these were one of the questions that came to my mind during the process. That's my impression.
What about you, Aurel? Was there something surprising or beneficial from the process?
Yeah, I'm the last one to speak, and I was trying to keep track of that. I wanted to mention 3 different things. Let's see if I will actually still remember that. So one of the things is that for me the outcome and the process is kind of separate, because the process is for us, because that's how we learn from each other, and that's how we share. And the performance itself, that's for the audience. So I would really like separate it, and that's the beauty of having the opportunities of having this collaboration that we come together. The second is really this because it's a co-creation, the artists have to internalize and have the knowledge of the subject, so that they can add their creativity to it, and then the final product is really going to be something that has the scientific content, and there is really art, and it's not like 2 things just somehow put next to each other. And we really aimed to do this. I'm not on the stage in the show, but we tried, and that was actually the moment when everything changed. Because what the biggest tangible experience from me is that when you do performative arts, the only way that you see how it works is if you stop speaking and you do it. And that's not, for me as a theoretician, that's not how it works. Even an experiment that's not how it works, because you detail it down to the last little piece, and then you just build it up after your blueprints. And there's a lot of tweaking, of course, but this performative arts is, I really felt that it's a totally different approach, and I would like to see that we can use some of the things that we did during the preparations, and how to connect with the other person, whether this can work in a scientific community or I don't know, maybe it would be interesting thing to explore.
I think Andrea is probably the most qualified to to talk about this, because you worked with you worked on projects like this before. So what would you say is the most beneficial aspect of connecting science and art, and what are maybe the limits?
So you mean the most beneficial for whom?
Both ways, I think, because we have both scientists and artists here.
Yeah. it's a long thing. We'll try to just maybe say a few things, but of course it's really a long discussion that we could have.
Of course.
The first thing I want to address is a point that you made, Aurel, which is very interesting. You said the process is for the artists and the performance is for the audience. My view is slightly different. I think the performance is also for the artists. And the reason why I say that is in order to make the performance alive, the artists must be looking for something even when they are doing the performance. They need to be a little bit off balance even then, just as much as during the process of creation. And this being off balance is extremely similar for artists and scientists, because the creative process is not just the creative process for an artist, but also it's the same creative process for a scientist. And I try to answer a little bit of your question by saying that scientists that work in this art-science collaboration tend to get a different understanding of their research, because they realize that they need to be take risks, because an artist is always taking risks during the research and also when they go on stage. But scientists like to be safe. They go to a conference and they have nice slides and everything is very safe, because they are afraid, not all of them, I'm not talking for all scientists, but many of those that I met. And I think one thing that they learn from this is that it's actually better to be a little bit unsafe sometimes, because that pushes them into this dimension of creativity even when they think they're finished with their research, and it opens up new directions. And that's why I think a lot of scientists come back to these workshops that I run, and they ask me to continue, because I think they appreciate that.
So maybe now we can talk a little bit about the process itself, like what worked for you, what didn't. Were there point where the scientists wanted to do something in the show and the artists were like, oh, this is a little too rigid for us? Or was there a point in the show where artists wanted to do something and the scientists needed to correct the accuracy of the scientific method? Maybe you can start. Like you try different positions, you know. And
I'll start with the easy part, then I'll go into the more difficult part. So with the scientists, since we also, as I mentioned, we had experience, since very early stage, we agreed that they will bring they'll be like consultant, they will bring the information, they'll help with all sorts of relevant scientific information. But they will not participate live because they were both very busy. I say this because in previous performances, Vladi, he was also a performer on stage. And this, since the beginning, we said, okay, they're very busy, they cannot engage in this process as an actors. But then, of course, we decided that they should have some extra role, not only being consultant. That's why we assigned them this role as some sort of TV contributors to the TV show, scientific contributors. This was the easy part. Maybe the toughest part was with Andrea when we wrote the script, because it's difficult to. I don't know. It's my first time that I really co-write a script like fully. It was very interesting process, but very difficult because when you born some baby, it's difficult to kill it. It was kind of tough, but I'm happy with the result. I hope Andrea also.
And was there some interesting scientific fact that you wanted to fit in but it didn't fit with the script, or you wanted to fit in something that didn't fit with the scientific? Or not really, because during the process
I wouldn't say about the science, it was more like the sort of more the theatrical dimension. This is how it worked. And please correct me, Dimitar, if I recollect wrongly, but essentially we met here in Sofia for a period, maybe a residency of 7-8 days, where we really did very intense work where we wrote. Essentially, I wrote one script and he wrote another, and then we tried to see how they could work together. And we realized that it was hard to make them work together. So it was very natural at one point, because it was a project born here in Sofia by his company, for him to take charge. And I became sort of like a consultant on the script and on the directing, because I wasn't here to follow. So it became, we found this sort of agreement, and I must say it was a good thing, because it prevented us from having, collisions. And so we are still friends. After,
This is the most important.
Yeah, exactly. That's the most important. But of course, we are.
Maybe one last touch to say, to give you like insight of the writing. Of course, it was not, I write for 3 days on my side, Andrea on his, and then we compare, but actually we wrote scene by scene. One scene, okay, we agreed the first scene should be this. We wrote our versions, then we exchange, okay, then how we could develop this into the next scene, and everybody again had 2 versions, and this is how we. But at the end version, there are like ideas from both.
Yeah, you need to marry the babies.
Yeah, we marry. Yeah.
So what about the Tafa Theater, the Czech team? How would you describe the cooperation?
So we started the process with me and Aurel having meetings and establishing somehow the main door that whatever we write, we create, it should be right, quantum-wise should make sense. Like we will not invent quantum physics, and everything what appears in the performance, it should be correct information. He's nodding. Thank you.
That's pretty good.
Yes, and then I entered into the labyrinth of playwright, and I did a super overwrite play based on some fairy tale motifs, because we also decide that the narrative structure of the performance, because we are doing it for children, it should be simple and recognizable. So the audience shouldn't put effort in understanding the step A, step B, climax, and the ending, but have some memory about. And in our case, it's the story of the 7 goatlings, which is quite universal. And then we rehearsed, and during the rehearsals, the artists found themselves unbalanced. So there was a friction, because understanding quantum physics, putting it in a playwright, it doesn't mean that it will work and it will live on the stage. So when we go to rehearse, and for the performance as well, I believe the most important thing that it should live on the stage. No matter what you understand, no matter what the quantum physics, the important is really the actors, how they create, how they do the performance. So we needed to cut back. The actors, of course, they are good, they are smart, they had a really good sense of the stage, and then they killed my baby.
There was actually an interesting point. At one moment, the puppeteers, the actors were like, maybe it would be easier with less puppets. Would it make sense? And then maybe if Aurel can collaborate, that we were thinking 2 babies, 3 babies, 7 babies. And then he brought up the quantum physics background, which was interesting. Working with particles.
To give the context, we have 7 kids, as in the fairy tale. And then we were thinking about downgrading them to 3. And we had long debates about yes, no, why. The sonographer said, but I carved out there, and it was hard. and then Aurel said, and Aurel came and said,
what did I say?
That it makes it like there needs to be 3 particles.
So if I may whisper, so Aurel, you said that we have the same issue in quantum physics with the 7.
Yeah, okay. But I had this in mind from the very beginning. So let me reinterpret what Reka said from the beginning. And maybe it is useful that you hear the same.
Yes.
That we try to say the same thing from both sides. So from my side, I had a pretty clear idea of what the aim should be, and the aim is that the number one, it should be whatever is said should be scientifically accurate. Baseline. And the other is that whatever we create should be entertaining, because that's how we actually get an audience. And the other was that then comes a little bit more of how we actually bring in the specific subject, and the idea was to, rather than trying to answer questions, pose them, like make them appear on stage. And on a smaller scale, the idea was that every scene would have one and exactly one new concept, and then this had to be met with the dramaturgy of how many parts, how many repetitions. I don't know all this, and then that's where Reka was there, and then these things of what are the numbers that we have to work with, and how do we get the physics into those kind of frameworks. And then, okay, we have this kind of super great idea, and then Jakub and I go on stage and it just doesn't work. So then we go back, everyone is down that day, and 1 hour late because the next day because we lost a bit of motivation. But then something happens, and then we pick it up because something happens, and there's a moment on stage, oh, that actually works, and then it even makes sense from physics. It makes sense on the flow of the story, and then okay, and then let's go and pick up on that. Yeah, and of course sometimes there were debates and conflicts. And
Victor, do you want to share anything?
From my point of view, it was like perpetuous crisis management, this process, and it really needed a lot of creativity, and we had a list of tasks for this project. For example, that was really important to find a site, the proper site for this project, and it's not easy because we really wanted to give voice to the nature, and what site should be proper for this, and it was absolutely by accidental that we found a place where there was a lake named Frog Pond, and at that point we had the fairy tale in which there was some type of frogs, not actually frogs, but sometimes turtles, and there was a lake as well. So it was a little bit accidental sometimes, but we could sense throughout this that maybe we really gave voice to the nature and some vote to the nature in the dramaturgy and in the process. And that was just one crucial task for us, finding the site. But finding the proper tale, fairy tale, it was really hard because it's a huge tradition, and we were searching not just in the Hungarian fairy tales tradition, but other nations and ethnic traditions as well. And the most crucial and the hardest part was to find a focus within the area of the evolutionary biology. It's a huge area. We could talk about anything in this, and how to find something which is close or could be close to the children's, because we also have children's in our audience with 4 age. It's almost impossible. What kind of language should we use for them? How could it be as less verbal as it could. What kind of non-verbal techniques can we use?
Maybe last question for everyone. Would you participate in a project like this again? Trying to merge science and theater together based on what you experienced? Yes, no.
Yes.
Yes, of course, yes.
Yes, if it will be kind of grassroots initiative. I mean, as we did with the barbecue and the beer. Meaning that people come together and they're interested in one topic, they search for the funding or how to realize it, and then they finalize it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.